Understanding one Salvatore Moreau starts with being able to understand the desire for one to fit in, to truly fit in, and in that we can surmise the rest of his character. Hey, what's up guys? Tolerant Madman here to show you some of the lore and a little bit of a breakdown for Resident Evil 8 antagonists, and we're going to move on further back down the series. And in this particular one, I have a theory as to Salvatore Moreau's past and what he was doing during the events of Resident Evil 8. So jumping right in, if you like this kind of content, make sure you like and subscribe and come for more of it. And starting off, his undying loyalty to Mother Miranda, and this being a loyalty that he took to his grave, is merely a byproduct of his overwhelming desire to fit in, to be accepted. So like many others, he gave himself up to a higher power. For many, this higher power is God or some other form of classical religion. But for Moreau, he chose to put his faith in Mother Miranda and the cult that surrounded her. Not much is known of Salvatore Moreau's past, not even in the games or any kind of the promotional material, but we can glean some information from his tattoos, namely his nautical tattoos that suggest that he was some form of fisherman or handled fish regularly like in a hatchery. And those tattoos being a jellyfish with Mother written in the middle on his upper left shoulder and an anchor on his left forearm. Interestingly enough, it seems as though his Caldu took this into account whenever he was mutated, taking his profession, and as in his final form, he became exactly what he hunted in life. He acclimated the Caldu better than those who were turned into lichens or who outright died, but that isn't saying much as to his condition. Out of the four lords, he seems to have the poorest affinity for the Caldu, and this is reflected by his report. Subject name Salvatore Moreau. Caldu affinity low. Brain functions surprisingly low. Caldu has caused drastic changes to internal organs, transforming them into organs similar to fish-like gills and a swim bladder. Another subject with irregular cell division causing him to transform into a giant fish. The subject is unable to control this transformation, too many defects, an unfit vessel for Ava. The reason why later in the theory we'll go over this more is that she put surprisingly low. Not that it's just low, that she was surprised by it being low. And she didn't emphasize surprisingly, or low, so it's not that it was lower than average or lower than normal, like as if he had mental retardation. She put that she was specifically surprised that it was low in general. And I'll be going over that later in the theory. The first time we see Moreau, you can actually see quite a bit of his nature, we'll call it, at play. He is very subservient, and you can see that in force as he's even brushed aside by the likes of Angie, not even Donna herself. Then being told to shut up by Heisenberg and complying with both of them, both allowing himself to be shoved away by a small doll, and obeying Heisenberg even though they are both supposedly equals. This subservient nature is displayed later when we next encounter him to take the flask from him. He realizes that direct confrontation won't go over very well, so he attempts to play on our emotions and trick us. And this actually works long enough for him to try and trap us in his reservoir. We end up almost escaping despite his best efforts to trap us, once again another indirect form of attempting to stop us, and this forces him to confront us directly, which is something he definitely didn't want to do, and in doing so, triggers his Caldu to mutate him beyond all recognition, so that he has a fighting chance in a physical altercation. Upon doing so, he gains a massively oversized fish body that we have to level the playing field against by draining all the water in the reservoir, and to escape. So that once we've drained the water, his advantage is now his hindrance. He uses his acid vomit and oversized body to fight us, but it's not enough for him to defeat us, and as he dies, you can hear him calling out for Mother Miranda to save him as he petrifies and falls to dust. With Moreau dead, reading his diary, we get a little bit of this insight to what he was doing leading up to his death.
Disgusting.
Moreau's diary, page 1. October 1st, a sunny day. Mother Miranda brought me 5 peoples from the village, just like I asked. I made them sleep with some liquid, and then I put Caldu in their tummies. I am looking forward to the Caldu to grow in their tummies. Moreau Diary 1, October 2nd. A cloudy day. 4 of the people from the village are dead this morning. 1 is almost a lichen. I sent it to my lab on the mountain. I failed again. Mother wants strong vessels, but I cannot get any. I will need more people from the village. Moreau's Diary 2. Mother Miranda gave me a rose jar. No one likes me, which is why I thought that they would leave me out again. But Heisenberg said that was why we each get a rose. The ceremony cannot happen without all of these. Mother didn't seem to care, though. Moreau's diary, too. Mother said Rose is a vessel. With a vessel, Mother can get her real child back, even though she has been dead for a very long time. Moreau's diary, too. If Mother does, then what will happen to me? I'm not her real child. Would she abandon me? No, I don't want that. And one of his last diary entries is just a series of no's repeating with an exclamation point following each. Moreau's diary of experiments. Mother Miranda gave me a mountain. Now I can do lots of Caldeu experiments. This is my secret laboratory. This being the laboratory that we storm after leaving the reservoir. Moreau's diary of experiments. I did 3 Caldeu experiments today, but they all went pop and made a mess. Moreau's diary of experiments. I put in the Caldeu, and then I tried putting wolf's blood from a needle into the spine. The person wriggled a lot, and then killed my assistant. I could not hold it down, so I put it in a cage. Now I have to feed it. The assistant is actually an important part, as this is the only person to ever be reported as somebody who was near Moreau that wasn't a mindless drone, which I will be getting into later. His death presumably was the end of the Moreau family line, and this leaves us with some questions. Domitrescu had her castle, Heisenberg his factory, and Donna had a large house with servants, a gardener, and that is just what we know about them. Not even things we may not have known about. So Lady D had her castle full of servants that she was in charge of, Heisenberg had a factory full of workers that he commanded, and Donna had an army of dolls, some servants in the house, and a gardener. All of this leads me to wonder, what did Moreau have? The only enemies that we encounter in Moreau's reservoir are lichens, and not even that many of them. This means from his experiments on the village, he just kept some of the failures to serve as bodyguards. He seemed to have no servants, no actual guards besides the villagers that he turned into guards, and no friends or family. This is why the assistant is important. It's the only mention of anyone outside of his failed experiments that was still around Moreau. This raises a lot of questions as to why he was made one of the 4 lords. What we do know is that people aren't from this village. Outsiders, as they are called, seem to have higher affinity with the Caldeu, so this means that all of Moreau's experiments were in vain, since the local populace seems to have very low affinity to the Caldeu, and those were who he was sampling from with his experiments. That said, Salvatore Moreau was not from the village, because both his seaworthy tattoos and Spanish name seems to suggest that he is from Spaniard descent. This also gives him a slightly higher affinity than the villagers, so there are some other factors into affinity that we don't know about, since even him being an outsider did not lead to him having a good affinity like Heisenberg or Domitrescu, or even Donna, who had high affinity to Caldeu, but had her crippling mental disorder. It is to my conclusion from all of these facts that he is no lord at all, and that he is everyone tricked into thinking that he is their equal. From his low affinity for the Caldeu to his obvious lack of land or servants, I think this is all being pointed towards him just being a fake. And if you look into what his humanish form is based off of from the references that Capcom took from, we get more clues leading to this conclusion than we have ones that deter it. His human form is based off of the Kappa, which is a creature/demon from Japanese folklore, and there is a lot of crossover here. First off, the Kappa are usually seen as a mischievous troublemaker or trickster figure. So this is a huge check for my theory, as we see him try to trick us when we first grab the flask. So maybe he tried to trick the other lords, and Mother Miranda too. But as for Mother Miranda, I'm willing to bet that he only lied so that she'd think more highly of him, not to necessarily deceive her with ill intent, which seemingly reflects him wanting to prove himself/outperform the others by being the one to stop us, and even giving us a speech that he needs to be the one to stop us to prove them all wrong. The other aspect of the Kappa that we see shown in Moreau would be that the Kappa are often blamed for drownings, and are said to lure people into the water or trick them into the water, pull them down and drown them. This is the exact method that Moreau tries to dispatch us with before we drain the water in the reservoir, meaning that's another parallel. The adult Kappa live in solidarity and are often alone. This is another point for Moreau as well, as the only thing let's emphasize thing because we don't even know that it was human or anything, is his assistant. That is the only thing that it was around him at all in mention. Meaning that he is the loner of all four lords, because all the other four lords had plenty of servants or workers or family members, gardeners, this, that, Angie the doll. They had something. Meanwhile, he had only an unnamed assistant that dies and we see nothing of. The last thing that we can take from the Kappa legend is quite possibly the most important part as well, and this being that when Kappas were befriended, they would often be seen as doctors with extensive medical knowledge and would even save others from drowning and teach humans how to set bones whenever they were broken. This is interesting because of another inspiration that Capcom took from being that of H.G. Wells' novel The Island of Dr. Moreau, which fits since it is implied that he was a doctor before his mutation as well. The Dr. Moreau from the novel also specialized in creating animal-human hybrids just like our Moreau. So in conclusion, I do believe that Salvatore Moreau was just a sad man that would do anything to fit in, fake his lordship, trick all those around him, and even lie to Mother Miranda, as long as he would be finally accepted by those that he admired. So to understand Moreau, I think all you have to do is ask yourself what you would do to be accepted and loved by those around you. That's the end of the video. And if you liked the video, make sure you like and subscribe and come back for the next one. See ya.